We're starting the program early today to make time for the regular briefing, which is poised to begin at 1:40 this afternoon as opposed to 2:10. Concerns remain over cluster infections as cases linked to the Itaewon outbreak here in the capital city stand at more than 200 as of this Thursday. Meanwhile, investigations are still underway to determine the source of infection at Seoul's Samsung Medical Center, where 4 nurses tested positive for the virus and 2 other cases have been confirmed in relation to them. So far, more than 1,200 people have been tested with regard to the outbreak at that hospital. Also, high school seniors started offline classes yesterday, but schools in Incheon and Ansong ended up cancelling classes after a number of high school students there tested positive for COVID-19. Findings as of this Thursday show Korea has 12 new cases, raising its total to 11,122. Korea also saw its death toll rise by 1 to take its total to 264. We'll have more on those numbers at the briefing, and while we continue to wait for it, perhaps we can now take a look at the daily life quarantine guidelines. Oh, I hear that the briefing is about to start. We'll come back to you after it.
Let us now begin our regular briefing for May 21st, Thursday. We have 12 new cases so far, and the total number of confirmed cases now stands at 11,122. This includes 1,191 imported cases, and out of them, 88.9% are South Korean nationals. And we have 69 more people being discharged, and currently 723 people are in quarantine undergoing treatment. Yesterday, unfortunately, we had 1 additional fatality. And I extend my deepest condolences to the deceased and the members of the bereaved families. And of the 12 new cases, we had 2 imported cases, while 10 were locally transmissions. And 2 of the imported cases was from the Americas and UAE, respectively. And as for the community infection, here are some updates. First of all, relating to the Samsung Medical Center in Seoul, we have conducted testing for about 4,200 people, and we have no case of confirmed case as of yet. And currently, we are doing periodic testing and monitoring for all persons who are contacts or subject to active monitoring. And in the Samsung Medical Center, for those who have having contact with these nurses from May 9th to 10th, we have 2 confirmed cases who have been making contact in Seoul and Seosan, and also in relation to the business and facility in Seochogu district that they visited together, we are doing the epidemiological investigation. And next is updates on the high schools. In Daegu, in Meister High School, we have confirmed that there was 1 case of positive case among the senior citizens there, and a total of more than 100 of its seniors have been sent back home, and we are carrying out our epidemiological investigation. And next is the updates for the club-related cases in Itaewon. And as of noon today, there are a total of 206 confirmed cases related to the Itaewon club, and Seoul accounts for 101. And looking at the sources of infection, the club visitors, there are 95 patients, and contacts amount to 111. And as for the club visitors in Incheon district, in Incheon city, and these people have visited a Vision Plaza building in Michuhol-gu district, and we carried out an investigation behind these analysis on the environment. And because the facilities were poorly ventilated, and it was very enclosed, and we assessed that the risk of droplet infection had a very high risk of infection. Therefore, the Incheon government has placed a ban on all of the students under the age of 19 to refrain from going to these karaokes, and banning all of the public to going to coin karaoke rooms until until June 6th. And we have been disclosing a list of the venues where the confirmed cases have been to. And by facilities, we saw that enclosed spaces like karaoke rooms and bars, we have seen that the risks of infection is especially high among these places. So we ask our people to be alert on that. And we have figured out that in relation to the club, out of the total, when they were at homes and the taxi rides, aside from these places, we have identified 51 facilities, and a majority of them amounting to 12 have used the karaoke rooms, and they were exposed to the disease. And the list is as follows: the offices and the military, as well as other facilities, were also the medium of infection. So as we have seen in our analysis in the Incheon city, we have figured out that the karaoke rooms have a high risk of infection. Moreover, the quarantine authorities at the KCDC since 24th of April to 6th of May, if anyone has visited any of the nightlife entertainment venues in Itaewon area, including any clubs or bars, if you have showed symptoms, and please immediately go to the screening clinic to get tested. Moreover, we also want to prevent any possible risk at schools, and here are some messages to the schools. And as for students, teachers, and staff, they need to check their symptoms in the morning and stay home if they have fever or respiratory symptoms. They also need to wear face masks at all times while at school, and strictly follow personal hygiene measures such as hand washing and coughing etiquettes. And we even highlight that we have been resuming offline classes. We ask all of the students, teachers, and staff members to avoid karaoke rooms, PC cafes, nightlife clubs, and bars. And schools, they need to also ensure that every student's body temperature is checked before they enter the classrooms. And if a student has temperature of 37.5 degrees or above, or have any other symptoms, the school should have the student put on an KF mask and place him or her in a separate location. And if a confirmed case is found within a school, all students, teachers, and staff of the school will be instructed to put on a KF mask, and they have to return home immediately. And we will carry out disinfection in these schools. And the following is a word of the disclosure of the traces of the confirmed cases. And some of the localities in the local governments, they have disclosed information on the whereabouts of these confirmed cases. And the purpose of disclosing is to guarantee a swift measure of quarantine. And we have to understand that we have to disclose this so until the extent that we can protect the privacy information of individuals. So please keep this in mind. However, some of the local governments have disclosed private information, including gender and age, and this is being witnessed across local governments. And we please again urge the local governments to abide by the principles of the disclosure of such information, and please manage accordingly. And we have a few messages for the public. And yesterday, we have the resumption of online classes for seniors of high school. We have seen confirmed cases. However, we have many related ministries and people and our staff members and teachers who have been exerting their full efforts to prepare the resumption of schools. And we want to thank the parents as well. I understand there where there could be confusion and a lot of concerns as we resume offline classes. However, everyone has been preparing to a large extent, and we believe that quarantine needs to go hand in hand with the furthering of the education and learning. So we ask the individuals to participate in our quarantine authorities' guidelines. And we also have a few words for the senior high school students as well. We want to thank you too. And if you have any symptoms before going to school, please report to your teachers or parents. And after school, please refrain from going to multi-use facilities. This is a dedication that you need to make, and I believe that this is something that you need to have responsibility over as an individual of the community. If there have been confirmed cases at a school, please note that this person is just another COVID-19 patient. We shall not stigmatize or discriminate or criticize the confirmed cases. Only when we do so can we have a successful battle. Can we earn a successful battle against the COVID-19. And recently we have seen an increase in the number of confirmed cases surrounding the nightlife venues in the metropolitan area, and we are also confirming the chains of infections. This means that within our communities there have been continuously silent spreaders, and this gives us an alarming bell that we need to be stay vigilant. And we highlight this many times, but considering the features of COVID-19, COVID-19 can spread even without symptoms. It has a high rate of minor symptoms, and it can spread very fast and very strongly, even with small and short contact time. And as we said earlier, please refrain from going to enclosed spaces like karaoke rooms, PC cafes, nightlife, and bars. And if there is a spread of droplets, anyone can be infected at any place. Please remember this, and please continue to stay vigilant. Last but not least, some of the international media have reported on the progress of the vaccine development, and we are also aware of this, and we have seen a diverse mediums of vaccines that have been reported. And also, we know that here in Korea, centering around certain companies, we are currently carrying out proactive R&D as well. As for Korea, we believe that within the latter half of next year, we can develop a vaccine of composition of vaccine, and we are currently doing our best to develop them. And as for the therapeutics, we believe that our goal is to have the clinic trials within this year, and we are trying to develop the plasma as well as other related therapeutics. And I believe that you may be very nervous or concerned about the virus, and I believe that you are embracing difficulties and discomfort at all levels of life. However, please remember that the quarantine authorities are exerting our full efforts, even in the area of R&D, and we will make sure that we have visible results soon. Thank you very much.
Right, we began early this Thursday to make time for the regular afternoon briefing that began at 1:40 p.m. Right, Swa? Do give us a summary of the key announcements today.
All right, well, we had a drop in new cases this Thursday, so let's begin with taking a look at our general updates first. We have 12 new infections, which brings the total to 11,122, and 1 fatality as of 12 a.m. And 723 people remain in quarantine, and more than 10,130 people have fully recovered. Now, not written here, but in the meantime, more than 35,000 are in self-isolation. Now, by region, we have 4 new cases in the capital Seoul and 6 in Incheon, 1 in Chungcheongnam-do province, and 1 case has been detected at the airport. We have 2 imported cases from the Americas and the United Arab Emirates, and the rest were domestic infections. So with that, community spreads account for the majority of cases, but we do see a change from yesterday when we had 32 cases, so a drop by 20 cases. It looks like due to the emerging clusters, there is potential for this graph to fluctuate between the teens and 30s. But for the past weeks, we did not experience explosive increases. Now, meanwhile, according to Kwon Jun-ok, the vice head of the KCDC, he mentioned a number of updates on the recent cluster infections we had. First off, at Samsung Medical Center, which is a major general hospital in the capital, no additional confirmed case has come out from that case as more people have been tested. So far, 4 nurses and 2 other contacts have been confirmed there. And then we know that high school seniors went back to school yesterday, and there was a case at a Daegu High School where where a high school student has been infected. Meanwhile, onto the Itaewon Club-related case, 206 people are now confirmed to have been infected in relation to that case, and around half of those, 101 people, were from the capital, Seoul. And meanwhile, in Incheon, there's also a lot of concern because there have been students who tested positive for the virus and who were at so-called singing rooms, which are popular here in Korea. And it looks like the government has decided to virtually shut down these singing rooms until June 6th. And this goes for coin singing rooms. And then students under the age of 19 are restricted from visiting any singing rooms. So that has been latest administrative order from the government. And last but not least, Kwon Jun-ok also had a message to the high school students as well as the public and especially the parents as well, thanking them for abiding by these basic guidelines that have to be abided by so that quarantine measures as well as education can go hand in hand with each other.
Right. Meanwhile, on the global front, so I hear we have some alarming numbers.
Yes, 106,000 new coronavirus cases were recorded worldwide on Wednesday, and this is the largest number in a single day so far since the first outbreak in China at the end of last year. The total number of infections has surpassed 5 million, and the latest death toll stands at over 329,000. A little over 2 million people have fully recovered, and the number of countries and territories that have more than 100,000 total cases is also rising, as we can see on our map, which now include Peru and India as well. And 213 countries and territories around the world and 2 international conveyances are affected by the virus. The World Health Organization gave a strong warning on Wednesday that the pandemic is far from over. While wealthier countries are reopening their economies, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus particularly referred to the virus spreading in developing countries, saying, quote, "We still have a long way to go in this pandemic. We are very concerned about rising cases in low and middle income countries." He also noted that 2/3 of the 106,000 new cases were confirmed in just 4 countries, the US, Russia, Brazil, and India. So let's take a closer look at those countries on our table. The US has almost 1.6 million cases now and almost 95,000 deaths. And Russia has more than 308,000 total infections. And Brazil also has really emerged as a hotspot with almost 300,000 cases.
Now, so as you just mentioned, the U.S. has almost 1.6 million cases, but all 50 states are now allowed to partially open, I hear.
Yes, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a 60-page-long reopening guidance document based on which all states started to lift restrictions to revive the economy. It offers recommendations on how restaurants, bars, public spaces, transportation systems, as well as schools and childcare centers can reopen while maintaining safety. This comes on the back of slight declines of new coronavirus cases, whereas there are states that still see inclining figures. With experts predicting numbers are expected to go up with lifting of restrictions. State officials and health experts called on expanding testing and contact tracing, improvements in treatment and vaccine development before moving on to the next stage of the country's reopening process.
All right, Soa, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Aram, as Soa mentioned, concerns are still lingering over the outbreak in Itaewon.
That's right. These cases tied to the clubs in Itaewon have not led to an explosive rise in infections, but have continued to increase steadily, so there is some concern there. And as we heard in the briefing earlier, there are now more than 200 cases linked to the Itaewon cluster. Now, the biggest concerns are secondary, tertiary and even quaternary infections stemming from the Itaewon clubbers, and new cases are also spreading nationwide, as we've seen. Health authorities remain on high alert over further community spread, especially with the reopening of high schools, as we heard earlier as well. Now, 2 of these high school students in Incheon tested positive, as we heard as well, forcing nearly half of the schools there to send students back home on the day of reopening yesterday, as I mentioned yesterday as well. Now, schools in Ansang have also decided not to reopen after a confirmed case there as well. Health authorities are also trying to block the spread of infections at singing rooms and bars, which are of particular concern now. Health officials in Incheon, as we heard, are ordering the public, especially young people, to refrain from going to these facilities, especially these confined coin singing rooms, because they are confined and the hygiene levels aren't that up to par, so that could spur further spread of the virus.
Meanwhile, Korea is receiving more words of praise from the Global Health Organization.
That's right. The WHO chief, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, he did paint quite a gloomy picture, saying the world has a long way to go in this pandemic, as Soa alluded to earlier. But he did note that countries like Korea have built on their experience of MERS to quickly implement what he called a comprehensive strategy to find, isolate and care for every case and trace every contact. Now, he added that this approach was critical to Korea in curtailing the first wave and now quickly identifying and containing new outbreaks. Now, in another note, US President Donald Trump, meanwhile, has said that the US has the most COVID-19 cases in the world due to rigorous testing, like we saw here in Korea as well as Germany. Now, he called the big numbers a badge of honor, arguing the still increasing number of cases is simply evidence the country is testing more people. Now, despite Trump's claims, the US still trails many nations in per capita testing, so it's yet to be seen how accurate those figures are.
Now, after months of delay due to COVID-19, I hear China's biggest annual political gatherings are poised to begin.
That's right. The National People's Congress, which kicks off tomorrow, will be quite different this year, of course, because of the pandemic. Now, it's usually a 2-week affair, but this year's event has been shortened and some sessions will be held over video link or video conferencing. Now, the parliamentary session also coincides with the meeting of an advisory body collectively known as 2 Sessions. That starts today. Now, the event is usually a time for China's political elite to rubber stamp policies and indicate new policy directions. Now, in holding the 2 sessions, analysts believe Beijing is trying to signal what it's been calling its victory over the virus, and China's government is also trying to emphasize control and leadership as it tries to move on from the pandemic. Now, it's also likely to draw up policies to deal with the post-COVID-19 era, with reviving the economy likely to be a top priority during the gathering. Now, President Xi Jinping is facing one of the biggest tests of his leadership. China has not only had to deal with a pandemic, but it's also dealing with a crippling economy at the moment, as well as discontent from home and tensions abroad as well.
Right, Aram, thank you for that. We'll see you again tomorrow. Now, moving away from this part of the world to Europe, Italy has started to unlock its economy after more than 2 months in lockdown. Come June 3rd, the country will welcome travelers from the European Union without requiring them to go into quarantine. For more on the latest there, I have live on the line Kwon Song-dok, a government-licensed tour guide in Italy. Hello, Mr. Kwon.
Hello.
Mr. Kwon, let's begin with the situation there in Italy, given these tangible efforts to ease the lockdown. What is the atmosphere there like?
Fortunately, from 18th of June in Italy, we don't need more auto certification to go outside. We can go to another city as long as in the area of same province. I have been to Florence on 18th of June. There are lots of stores and restaurants still closed because there are not many clients dropping by. Especially in Florence, it is a famous tourist city all over the world, but there are enough tourists and there are not enough tourists. It's kind of useless. When I met some vendors, they were a little bit sorrowful and concerning. And they have some regulation. For example, a beauty shop and barber shop, hairdresser have to put a plastic mask on. In restaurant, each tables have some distance of 4 meters. And on the beaches, people have some distance of 5 meters. Fortunately, for a restaurant or bar, they put some tables outside, but it is for public, and so they have to pay the tax. But government can help the support, not to pay the tax. They can't open theater and movie theater, and they need some support from Italy government. What I know is each province, cities, they have a different policy. So rich and well-off cities or a province can help their cities well. So I feel in Italy it's so important that their hometown and their where they're from.
Right. Mr. Kwan, tourism is one of the main industries in Italy, like you mentioned, of course. And as a licensed tour guide, I'm assuming that you must have felt the fallout of the pandemic firsthand.
Oh, yeah. My job is a tour guide for Korean, but Korean can come to Italy. It means I lost my job. Nothing.
I see.
Fortunately, I could receive 600 euro. It's about 800,000 won from Italy government. Many Koreans work in tourism industry in Italy as a tour guide and accommodation, like a bed and breakfast and snap photo for tourists. They are not the client. So some Koreans come back to Korea, and we are waiting for restoration. Unfortunately, I have another job. I'm making a video for YouTube. That is the only way to earn money.
That is good to know, Mr. Kwan. That is good to know. Now, as I mentioned earlier, travel restrictions are poised to be lifted from June 3rd. Please tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, yeah. What I know is from that the 3rd of June in 26 member states of the European Union, they don't have some kind of self-isolation and from the country to country, and United Kingdom and of Great Britain and Northern Iceland, and states part of the Schengen Agreement, non-EU states party to Schengen Agreement, or it means Iceland and Liechtenstein and Norway, and Switzerland, and Andorra and Monaco, and Republic of San Marino and Vatican City. So that countries we can go among that we can go freely without self-isolation. Otherwise, the Koreans cannot come to Italy nowadays.
I see. So it's only a partial lifting of the travel restrictions then?
Yeah.
Mr. Kwan, concerns over the contagion continue even as we speak. Why did Italy decide to open up its border then? It
looks very fast because there are still a lot of contagious cases in Italy. But for me and Italians are not. About 2 months we could go outside. I feel even though Italy is, even though Italy is one country, but inside it is not. It means our cities are separated. I feel like that. So many cases happen, but in northern Italy, and there are a lot of contagious cases. But middle and south a little bit less. So they have some complaint from middle and south. So I'm staying in Toscana. It's about 0% contagious cases. So and in June and in July, it's gonna be alright. Italians think, and my father-in-law thinks. So yeah, so that's why they need to open the tourism. And 13% of Italy industry is tourism. So this summer, if they pass this season with the lockdown, the economy of Italy is going to be a serious problem.
I see. Mr. Kwon, one final question before you leave us. How is Korea's response to the pandemic being regarded in Italy?
Yeah, well, that is amazing news, actually. Before coronavirus, when I say I'm a Korean, they thought usually before the coronavirus, they usually think I'm North Korean, and rocket is rising, and they saw many scenes from news. They don't know, the Italians don't know about Korea exactly. But in this case, unfortunately, it is good chance to inform, because unfortunately, because it is not a good situation, but it is a good chance to inform our who we are, especially to Italy. When coronavirus occurred first was China, and Korea was the second, and third was Italy. They showed they showed our situation. I was so sorrowful. They showed our bad situation. They already, I feel, looked down a little bit, but we were escaped from the bad situation. They showed how Koreans escaped from coronavirus.
Right.
It is a good chance to show who we are.
Yes, it
So
was.
fortunately, almost all Koreans know about our country, and they brought application from our country especially. And elders know the Korea exactly. So it's very good.
Right.
All
right, Mr. Kwon, thank you very much for joining us at this early hour to share your thoughts.
Thank you.
우리 경제의 디지털화의 가속과 비대면화의 촉진 등에 중점을 둔 디지털 기반 일자리 창출 및 경제 혁신 가속화 프로젝트를 중심으로 추진한다는 것이 그 요점이 되겠습니다.
Now, caution over the latest coronavirus appears to have changed consumption patterns here in Korea. In fact, we've coined a new term to describe that is the act of facilitating these consumer encounters in the absence of face-to-face interactions. It's called untact consumption, as in there is no contact consumption. For more on this, I have Professor Yang Hee-dong from Ewha Women's University. Hello, Professor Yang.
Hi, nice to see you.
And I also have Andres Sanchez-Brown, a journalist for EFE in Spain. Hello again, Andres.
Thanks for having us today.
Professor, we'll start with you. According to Financial Times, online retailers are the clear winners of COVID-19. How much of an increase are we talking about in terms of online transactions here in Korea and abroad?
Well, absolutely, the online retailers are the winners of this currently the incident. For example, in March of this year, the Korean online shopping has increased about 12% to $2.5 billion. And 2/3 of those orders were conducted on the smartphones. So now the dependency on the smartphones for online commerce has increased to almost has increased by 20%, I mean this year compared to last year. And in the world, the Amazon has increased, in the first quarter, their sales has increased about 26% to $75.5 billion. So it's just a humongous increase online.
I see. Andres, this so-called untact consumption, it's also visible in the consumption of contents regarding culture contents, that is, if I may. I hear that new subscriptions to over-the-top content platforms have surged. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think there's no better example of for what you just mentioned than Disney Plus, Disney's new OTT platform. They have hit 50 million subscribers in barely 6 months. These are numbers that they were trying to attain by 2022. I think that says it all. Of course, they're not, they're way behind the world leader in this field, which is Netflix. They have around 167 million subscribers. But once again, we're pointing out this platform came to exist only 6 months ago, and it's not even available in markets like Korea yet. And until very recently, it wasn't even available in bigger markets like India or Europe. But as you pointed out, with the pandemic, people are staying home. They want to, take their minds off of the problematic that we're living. People are watching a lot of shows, a lot of movies. So, of course, I think the future looks very bright for these platforms, at least in the short term, because let's not forget that we also need to shoot new shows and movies in order to get this business.
Of course, that's a good point.
Going on, yeah.
Right. Professor Yang, is this the first time that an outbreak of disease has shifted the paradigm of consumption?
No, in the year 2003, when we had the SARS, the Alibaba has increased their sales revenue by about 5 times. So that year, they launched new business Taobao for C2C business. They also launched the Alipay. And year 2015, when we had the MERS, the Korean, the online retailer, the Coupon has increased their sales revenue by 3 times to almost $1 billion. So as you can tell, that all this kind of abrupt, the shift in our disease or the environment has caused new business, coming up.
Before we go any further, Professor, perhaps we could tell us a bit about the difference between e-commerce and no-contact consumption.
Well, basically, I should say that very, very similar. But the term untact is a Korean term. It's so-called the Konglish. So I should say that untact is rather trying to expand the coverage of internet to the face-to-face meetings. So it's not just about e-commerce, but also involved with the face-to-face communications or the streaming of the entertainment business, etc. So I should say that the untact has helped increase the coverage of the internet technology for our everyday aspect of our lives.
And Andres, what factors might have contributed to the surge in this untact or no-contact consumption?
Well, here in Korea, I could name a few. For example, the rise in the number of single-person households. I think that's important. Especially in Korea, I'd say the long working hours. Korea, as you know, is among the OECD countries, one of the ones that spends more time at work. And of course, this kind of untact service is very useful. Also, smartphone usage, which is even more widespread in Korea, if you like. And also, smartphone usage is in some way connected to the pali-pali culture that is prevalent in Korea. So I think when you mix all this together, you get this huge surge. I mean, before the pandemic, this kind of services were widespread in Korea. I think from now on, they're just going to grow even more, right?
Pali-pali referring to our terminology for quickly, right? Now, before we continue, it appears that it's not just the online retailers that are responding to this new consumption trend. Brick and mortar stores are also incorporating this new concept into their services. We have more in this following report.
Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, this place has introduced the concept of untact service, meaning no contact.
고객님들께서 언택트에 대한 니즈가 많이 강해지셨고요. 그에 맞춰서 저희 CGV도 언택트 심화를 도입하게 되었습니다. 저희 직원 대면 없이도 빠르고 편리하게 그리고 안전하게 영화를 보고 관람하시고 나가실 수 있도록 준비되어 있고요.
Enabled by cutting-edge technologies, the new concept has brought about revolutionary changes. The smart check system installed at the entrance checks tickets and shows guests their seats within a second for easy, quick entry. there is no need to line up at the concession stand. After people order at the kiosk or from an app and their order number comes up on screen, they just need to collect it from a pickup box.
실제로 고객님들께서 이용하시면서 저희 직원을 만나지 않고 상품을 구매하시거나 영화를 관람하실 수 있어서 안전하고 빠르다고 말씀하시는 고객님들이 많으셨고요. CGV 여의도의 언택트 시네마를 통해서 고객님들의 반응이나 개선할 부분들을 좀 찾고 저희가 내부적으로 검토한 후에 확대 계획을 갖고 있습니다.
Next, we visited a special cafe in Daejeon. When customers place a coffee order at the kiosk, the robot barista starts preparing the drink. When the beverage is ready, it's handed over to Torang, the server robot, who then brings it to the table.
주문하신 음식이 도착했습니다. 차가운 아메리카노입니다. 맛있게 드세요.
신사업 분야를 찾다가 보니까 지금 이런 커피 산업이 국내에서 많이 성장을 하고 있고 전 세계적으로도 붐을 이루고 있고 그리고 이제 어떤 로봇이 핸들링함에 있어서 그런 커피나 음료들이 좀 더 손쉽게 먼저 해볼 수 있을 것 같아서 본 사업을 시작하게 됐습니다.
The robots are interconnected to the main system, which allows them to collect and share data in real time. The cafe integrates the latest technologies, including big data, GPS, the Internet of Things, and robotics, to create a contact-free experience.
계속 설문을 통해서 장비를 업그레이드 시켜왔고 직영 1호점에 대해서는 그러한 내용들이 다 개선된 사항들이 반영된 장비가 지금 설치가 되다 보니까 실제 이제 사용하는 고객들에 대해서는 만족도는 상당히 높은 편입니다. 11월까지 저희가 직영으로 운영하는 이 카페를 이 대전 1호점 포함해서 10개 지점을 오픈하기로 되어 있습니다. 그래서 해외 시장도 내년부터는 진출할 계획하고 있습니다.
The move towards no-contact service, which was triggered by the pandemic, is expected to reshape the consumption culture.
Well, given that video, Andres, it appears that technology is enabling many innovative ways of no-contact consumption. Could you tell us a bit about these cases elsewhere around the world?
Well, one of the most interesting projects that I've run into is that one by Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber, with the so-called ghost kitchens. Ghost kitchens are these cooking spaces established exclusively for food delivery. So actually this is how it works. You use AI and big data to establish what trend, what food delivery demand looks like, for example, in a particular district. And that way you craft your own offer to meet that demand and also detect the loopholes in order to make a bigger profit. And of course you minimize investment and other side risks normally associated to opening restaurants, right?
Sounds really efficient. Professor Yang, from either a consumer's point of view or that of a retailer's, what are some of the merits and setbacks of untact consumption or no-contact consumption?
Well, basically the online shopping or untact business has helped they expand new communication and the commercial channels, particularly appealing to the young generations. And besides, the manufacturers and retailers can take advantage of using the personal data to develop a very well-personalized service and product as well. But the major side effects or limitations of this approach is related to untact gap, or so-called the digital gap. In other words, if the customers are not familiar with the using smartphones or whatever, still they have a lot more frustrated or disappointed with this kind of very innovative and brand new approaches and services. So we can tell that there are some pros and cons, right? Being continued with this new approach, the untact business.
I can imagine my mom having difficulty with it. Andres, there are concerns that a rise in such services could actually pose a threat to job security. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, not only job security, as you pointed out, we're in this case cutting down on what we used to call the customer service industry. But also I think the concern here is with increased competition in this field, and cost cutting in the forefront, the new jobs that we're creating are in some places called trash jobs. So it's funny how we're widening the offer for consumers, but on the other hand, we're risking widening the gap of inequality in this case, in this field, in this particular field. Yeah.
So we will need measures to deal with that before we have this service available to the masses.
Probably.
All right, Andres, thank you very much for your thoughts. And Professor Yang, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks.
Right, and that brings us to the end of Thursday's edition of COVID-19. We'll be back tomorrow with a look at the measures adopted by the country's cultural community to ease the fallout from the pandemic. In the meantime, we welcome your thoughts and inquiries on our social media accounts or our homepage, arirang.com. Thank you for watching.